know. There's something I don't know here. And so I would seek out what do I still need to learn. And then that's how I was finally able to get that deal that went to the closing table.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you are getting some great value and enjoying the show, let us hear about it. Leave us some honest feedback with a rating and review. And if you haven't done so, make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. We've got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Lindsay Sharma. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. Now, Lindsay Sharma is a dedicated real estate investor and founder of the Lindsay Sharma Property Buyers. She's actively involved in the Central Arkansas market. Passionate about providing quality housing for tenants while ensuring an above average ROI for investors, she wanted to make sure to donate 5% of profits to support women and children first. Let's welcome to the show, Lindsay Sharma.
Hi, John. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. I went over your bio at a very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Sure. So as you said, I'm Lindsay Sharma, and I have been a real estate investor. Well, I've been in the real estate investing space for about 4 years now. Prior to that, I spent about 15 to 20 years in graphic design. Um, I grew up in the Midwest in Ohio and moved to Arkansas, lived there for about 10 years, and now I'm in Central Florida. So I actually run my business virtually. All of my investing is in Central Arkansas, and I do it from Florida. So my team is there and everything. So yeah, just a little bit about me.
I love it. So you started in graphic design, moved to real estate. You were originally from Ohio, so Ohio native, moved to Central Arkansas, now in Central Florida. Let's kind of, go into that transition from being a graphic artist to real estate investor. What sparked that transition for you?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of it had to do with my vision for my life, how I grew up. I mentioned I grew up in Ohio, a very blue collar area. The auto industry was a big player in providing people a job, a middle life lifestyle. And then as I was growing up, I saw the collapse of the auto industry and those jobs moving away, families suffering. My family, neither one of my parents went to college. We did, we lived a very nice life and very middle class, but, I did hear the arguments my parents sometimes would have over finances. And so I knew I wanted to live a life where I wasn't struggling financially. And I was fortunate enough to go to college. I got a degree in graphic design because I just sort of followed the idea of follow your passion. And I loved art. I was very creative. Um, I'm an introvert, so I love that kind of stuff. And when I graduated in 2007, it was right before the financial crisis, and we all know the economy tanked at that time. So for a new college graduate, I really struggled trying to find a job in my field, any job really. My first big girl job with a college degree was for Penske truck leasing. I was renting out trucks all day, not very designery, I guess you would say. So I sort of spent my 20s job hopping and just kind of being underpaid for a decade. And on the side, I freelanced a lot. I worked really hard to get clients, get work. Um, and I did start my own graphic design business, had that business going for a couple of years, but I kind of did everything wrong. It was more like a job that I had for myself. I was self-employed, but I wasn't running it like a business. I didn't have systems and processes. I didn't have a business plan, didn't have a marketing plan. I wasn't reinvesting and scaling and all of the things. So I really struggled at that time. And so that kind of turned me on to reading and learning about my financial literacy. I started learning about investing in real estate, passive cash flow, that sort of thing. And I really started listening to a lot of Bigger Pockets podcasts. And I kind of just sat around for a few years, just collecting information before I really took any action. And I just didn't know how to get started. I knew that, I wanted a better financial future for myself. I wasn't really making the money I wanted in graphic design. And so I was like, I don't really know what to do. How do I get started real estate investing? So I said, well, maybe someone who's actually working in this industry would hire me. So I started looking for jobs. I found a local real estate investor who was hiring in my market. And I applied to be his administrative assistant, which is something I had no experience in. But he offered me the job, and it worked out really well. And I worked for him for 3 years. I actually bought my first investment property under his mentorship, and they own business. And I've been running my business for a little over a year now.
Congratulations. I love that, right? So to play that back, you came out of college with your graphic design, background, rough time to try to find a job. So you end up, just job hopping, trying to find anything you can. Ultimately, end up launching your own business, focusing on graphic design, but didn't really understand how to be a successful entrepreneur. Didn't have the systems, didn't have the processes. So as you started to go on your own journey to learn more about that, focusing on financial literacy, you got exposed to, passive income and real estate investing and things of that nature, which ultimately led you down this path of, becoming an assistant for this other investor. And then through that relationship, that opened up the doors for you to make your first investment. I think there are a couple things that stand out to me. One, it's so important to go through your own financial journey and education because you never know what don't know what you don't know, but then you also don't know where one thing is going to lead to. So you start by learning one thing that, cracks the door open to something else, and you start to, let that imagination take over and see what's possible. For you, when it came to real estate and making that transition, you talked about taking this job as an administrative assistant. Were you running your own business at that time when you made that transition, or is this something that you had already kinda closed that down or what?
So I had actually, I kind of burnt myself out running my own business, and I ended up getting a job working for somebody else still as a designer. And I think I was still doing a little freelance at that time, but I kind of gave up. I was like, I'd rather collect a paycheck right now. And so I was working for somebody else as an employee before I accepted this job opportunity to switch over to real estate.
So I think that's interesting because, just from a psychological standpoint, right? Like you were an entrepreneur, you kind of bit the bullet and said, you know what? I'm not really where I need to be here. Let me just get a job doing this. So you do that, and then you transition to this administrative assistant job, which you had zero experience in, but in the real estate field. And it sounds like the reason you did that was just because you wanted that exposure to real estate. Talk to us more about that line of thinking to say, I'm going to leave this job in an industry that, I've been working on. I got my degree in, I've had my own business in this field to, I'm going to be an administrative assistant for this real estate investor.
Yeah, so I basically just wanted I had done a little bit of research on, how do you switch careers? And sometimes it's as simple as just applying for jobs in that field and kind of starting at more of an entry level position. And I knew that I had a lot of value to offer him. And that's kind of how I sold myself, because as a person who has run my own business in the past, I had to do all of that stuff. I was involved in everything, marketing, um, accounting, administrative work. I have experience in all of that stuff. And so I think, and then on top of that, one of my strengths is that I'm super organized. And so I really played up that in order to get this position. And I think that really worked in my favor.
No, I love it. And I think it's really important too to be able to make that leap. And the humility you must have had to make both of those moves, right? To close your shop, go take a W-2 job, but then also to walk away from that W-2 job to say, hey, you know what? I really want to switch industries. Let me go take this job as an administrative assistant so I can make this happen. It takes some humility that sometimes many people aren't willing to take, right? To make that move, whether it be a step back or a lateral move. So I think that is really important and definitely an insight for our listeners because if you're in a situation and you feel stuck or you're not making a progress and you know what move you need to make, but you just don't want to, or you feel like it's going to be a sign that you failed or that you know didn't succeed at something, just get over yourself, man. Like the rest of us aren't sitting here keeping score with you and that concerned with what you're doing, right? Ultimately, you've got to figure out your own path to success, and that's going to look different for every investor. Let's talk more about, you know, what you're able to do with that mentor than your first investment.
Yeah. So I was very transparent when I took that job. I said, I'm learning about real estate investing. I do want to be a real estate investor one day. I had never asked for help or mentoring. It just kind of naturally happened. I think I provided so much value to that investor and his business that he was just willingly open. I asked a lot of questions. That was another thing. I just always was asking questions about processes, systems. Why do we do this? And really just trying to learn and understand the industry, and that was kind of twofold. Part of it was my personal interest in investing, and then part of it was how can I serve him and his business better. I need to understand more, right? And so really the first investment opportunity I was involved in was actually as a private lender for and the investor's name is Justin. We'll use the name Justin. He actually approached me and you know presented the opportunity, said, if you want to invest the money, I have this deal. I need this and this a much amount. I will secure it by a note and mortgage. I'm probably going to use this money for maybe a couple of months and then I'll pay you back with interest. And, so he presented the offer to me, and um, my husband and I had some extra money in our savings account that wasn't doing anything. And I thought, okay, that sounds great. I trust him. I've seen his business success. I think this is a very safe investment for us. So that's exactly what I did. I wired some money to the title company for him, and we collected some interest. And I actually used that money a few times over for some other properties for him. And so I first got started as a private lender, and 6 months before doing that, I probably didn't know what a private lender was, and I didn't know it was such a thing. And then after that, I was like, okay, that's great, but I want to get more active. I want to own a property. And so he said, okay, great. You can start working leads in our system if you want. And so I actually learned how to talk to distressed sellers, and we went direct to sellers off market. And I started learning how to negotiate deals, how to do comp, make offers, all of that. And I actually, I think my first 9 deals all fell through for various reasons, and then probably on the 10th one, I got the deal closed. I bought a property, and I ended up owner financing that one out, creating an owner finance note on it with his help.
I love it. You talked about a couple things. One being upfront with what you were hoping to do, right? Hoping to be an investor, which I think was very helpful for you to know the vision and pathway you want to go down. The other thing you talked about was starting passively, even though maybe 6 months before you didn't know what a private lender was. You had some funds that were sitting around and used that to get started. And I think that's a really insightful thing because I think too often people hold on to their money because they want to use it for a down payment. And they're like, well, I can't invest this capital because I'm going to need this capital when I find that deal. And it really comes from a place of scarcity where you're really limiting the options. And the truth is, by investing passively first, you were able to get a feel for it. You're able to put some money to work. You were able to reaffirm that this is what you want to do. And you also want to be active, right? You got what you liked about it. You got what you didn't like about it. But you invest in a deal where it was maybe a shorter term hold. So you're going to get that money back. And it sounds like you put that money to work a couple different times. But ultimately, you went out to find your own deal, went direct to seller or direct to owner, and you were able to find that deal. You also talked about having 9 deals where they fell out of contract at some point before you actually closed on one. So the persistence and the patience that it takes to get that deal across the finish line, I think is really telling. So when you had those 9 deals that fell out of contract, you know, did you get discouraged at any point to say, well, maybe I should just go back to another job or maybe I should do something else? This isn't for me. Clearly, it's not working. Did you have any of those thoughts? And if so, how'd you overcome that?
Yeah, I definitely felt discouraged and had my doubts, but I have a bigger vision. I'm the type of person who I write out my goals. I have a vision board. Um, I'm very clear about what I want my life to be like in 5, 10, 15 years. And holding that vision close really helps in those tough times. And I also tried to look at those quote unquote failures as learning experiences. I would say, okay, well, that one didn't work out. Why didn't it work out? What can I change or what can I learn upon? And a lot of it was just I didn't really know how to do comps well. I didn't know how to analyze the data. And that it just takes a lot of experience to get better at it. And so I kind of treated it as a learning experience and also an experience of like what something I don't know. There's something I don't know here. And so I would seek out what do I still need to learn. And then that's how I was finally able to get that deal that went to the closing table.
I think that's brilliant, right? I mean, you're basically talking about accepting the feedback you got from the marketplace. If a deal didn't close, well, why didn't it close? What could have been done differently? What did I miss? Where do we need to fix this in the process moving forward? And that's really key because so often people just let a deal fall apart or, you put an offer and the deal doesn't work and they just move on without necessarily taking the lesson and then taking that feedback and then incorporating that into the process moving forward. So I think it's really important for you to, for you have to have done that so you can get that deal across the finish line, figure out whatever it was that was holding you back and allow you to make those adjustments. What are you focused on today?
Yeah, so today, in my real estate investing business, I mostly do wholesaling, single family homes. I also have a portfolio of owner finance notes as well as some rentals. So I'm really looking to the future, probably, selling off my portfolio of single families and maybe going into a syndication as maybe, an operator or something like that in the future. Um, but for now, wholesaling is just kind of paying the bills as I sort of because a lot of us still have our daily needs until our investments are at a point where um, maybe they retire us or whatever it is. Everyone has different financial situations and goals. But it's like I'm kind of focusing on building my long-term wealth, but I also still have to pay, pay for our family's daily living as well. So I'm just kind of balancing those two things right now, looking to the future, trying to work smarter and not harder. And I think a lot of people naturally go maybe start out in single family and then maybe go into multifamily or sort of evolve on their investing journey. So I hope to really do the same.
Yeah. And I,
Additionally,
yeah.
I've also started I'm at the very beginning phases of starting an adjacent business where I'm taking my graphic design experience and I'm designing pitch decks for investors. So I'm in the startup phase of that right now as well. So a
Well,
lot going on.
I love it because there's two things, right? And so many of our listeners are where you're at. I think oftentimes we get guests who are, they've got a huge portfolio and they've been doing this for decades. And it's great to learn from those individuals. But I think there's great, value in talking to someone like you too, who is really at that cusp where it's like, all right, I've got the wholesale side going, I've got my single families, I've got some notes. So I kind of have some assets we're starting to accumulate. And I see that the pathway here is to scale into larger multifamily investments. But I'm still, I still got to work this W-2 job. I still got to pay the bills. We still have this transition to get there. And I think it's really important to understand how to balance that. You also mentioned that you're starting this business where you're taking that graphic design experience and helping investors with pitch decks. And I think we'll come back to that because I think that's really important too. Talk to me about how you balance, again, the day-to-day work elements of what you need to deliver in trying to grow and scale the existing portfolio.
Yeah, so balance is definitely a key word there. And on top of all of that stuff going on, my portfolio and running my wholesaling business, I'm also a mom and a wife. I have three kids ages 4 and under.
Oh,
So
wow.
um, I maybe spend about 30 hours a week in my business, maybe sometimes less, just depending on family activities. But I find that delegating is super, super important. I do have a team and they're crucial. They're doing all the stuff that I, all the areas that I either don't enjoy or I'm not good at. And I hired for those positions very early on. And I'm kind of just keeping that model as I scale my business, just always focusing on having good people and delegating as much as possible. And so that actually frees up my time from the day-to-day things to actually work on more strategic things like my portfolio, looking at the numbers, analyzing the data, thinking more about the long-term plans. So that's really, really where I'm at with that.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Having that team in place, understanding that delegation is key. Three kids, under five, right? So that's enough of a challenge by itself. I can only imagine doing all that while trying to grow, two different businesses. So that makes a lot of sense. Talk to us about, where you saw the opportunity with the pitch decks and trying to design and work with other investors.
Yeah, so I actually work with a company called Simple CFO. They have fractional CFO services for real estate investors, and it's based on the model of the profit first way of managing money, basically. And so I was just having conversations with my fractional CFO, and he's actually a very experienced multifamily investor, and he's been an investor for a long time. And we were kind of talking about how sometimes in a young business, cash flow can be a little difficult to manage. And he told me about a time that, he started kind of a side business in conjunction with the business he was running and how helpful that was. And I thought, oh, that sounds great. Maybe I can do something. And he also expressed to me, he's like, I have tons of clients that need pitch deck help. And he's like, you can just merge your two experience of real estate investing with graphic design. And he's like, I'm sure there's a huge need for it. So that's kind of how the idea was born.
I think the thing there that stands out to me is, again, we have a lot of folks who have that, whatever their skill set or background is, right? Who want to use real estate as kind of that path to financial freedom and time flexibility, right? But they've got to find that bridge to get from the current W-2 situation to that new life. And one great option is to find that kind of that that ancillary income stream. For you, it's graphic design. So how do you take that graphic design background and apply it to real estate where you can have another stream of income that ultimately allows you to scale the real estate portfolio, but gives you that fluidity to move? And I think for a lot of our listeners, think about whatever it is you do in your day-to-day job. What is that knowledge that you have? What is that thing that you could tap into? Can you create a product or service there where you can get some additional income, and maybe that helps to smooth that transition as you look to go full time into real estate? It's a great way to do it. I mean, you already have the knowledge, you'll know where you can add that value. So it's definitely a great way to think about it. For you, we talked about you moved recently to Central Florida. Your assets are still in Central Arkansas. I know you have a team, but talk to us about how you're actually able to manage that team and manage those investments since you've moved to Florida.
Yeah. So part of it is just having people you trust and that pretty well, kind of being your boots on the ground, your eyes and ears. I I won't say it's not without difficulty. I actually recently worked with a contractor um, who really took advantage of the fact that I wasn't present and wasn't really hanging over him, managing his work. But I don't think that's something to stop anybody. As anyone who wants to run a business, you really shouldn't be really on the ground walking properties all day long anyways, right? You should have a team doing that for you because your time is better spent on some of the more maybe revenue generating activities or CEO type activities, right? So I think that the team is just the crucial part, and then obviously pictures, video, and just staying very organized with everything that's going on. But I think it's completely doable.
Yeah, I'm hearing you come back to systems and processes, right? Of how you're communicating with the team, making sure that things are happening the certain way. Yes, you're gonna have some folks maybe take advantage of it. My guess is that you learn from that and maybe made some adjustments so that you don't fall into that trap again. And that's always the hard part, when you're doing it is you can set up some systems and set up some processes, but you may have some folks who try to cut corners. So you have to figure out ways to really insulate yourself from that risk. Um, we talked about kind of your transition. We talked about the portfolio you're building and kind of the path you want to go down. One thing that was interesting in your bio is that you donate 5% of the profits to kind of women and children organizations. Can you talk to us more about, the Women and Children's First and why you felt like this was a strong passion that you wanted to be involved with?
Yeah, so Women and Children First is a nonprofit that provides services to women and children escaping domestic violence situations. Um, I don't remember the statistics off the top of my hand, but I read somewhere that more women have died at the hands of a partner than all of the casualties in every world war, period.
Wow.
Um, so it's a big problem. And that's why I support this cause. I'm just passionate about it, but it's in Arkansas and that's where I'm doing business. So I want my business to be able to give back to the community in more way than one in the community exists in. I also read a book about Amazon and how a lot of these mega corporations in the United States are not paying taxes that go, they're not even paying taxes in the United States. They're very low taxes. They have offshore tax shelters, and they're putting up shop in places and they're not putting any money back into those communities. At least maybe during the manufacturing age, your steel plant would employ the people in that community, but they were also giving money to the schools and they were supporting the local community in more ways than one. We're not really seeing that with businesses very much anymore. So I just wanted to do a little bit something extra to make sure that I'm putting some of my money, my business's money back into the community.
No, I love that. I'm glad you're doing that. And it's a great cause there. For folks that want to learn more, they can check out your website, lindsay.sharmaproperties.com, and we will make sure we put a link to that in our show notes. Right now, we're going to transition to our round of insights. Lindsay, give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
Wow. I would say scaling my business too fast in the beginning. It really taught me how to focus more on profit as opposed to revenue and scaling.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Um, I would say, honestly, Audible for books. I love to read. I think it's so important for entrepreneurs to constantly be learning. And because I'm a busy mom and business owner, I a lot of times have to listen to books while I'm doing other things. And so that's been huge for my growth.
Well, speaking of books, give me the book you recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
I would say the book titled We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers.
All right, sounds like a good one. All right, give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Meditation. I try to sit in silence for 15 minutes every single day. And it's kind of my time to connect um, with God or my higher power or the universe, whatever. Everyone has different terms. And so that really helps me feel grounded, centered, and clear before I start my day.
Give me your number one insight for transitioning into a real estate career and building your own portfolio.
I would say start surrounding yourself with people who are already doing it, whether it's Facebook group, local RIAs, um, reaching out to people already in your network who maybe know other people. Just start building those relationships.
All right, and let's lighten the mood with this last one. So I know you're recently in Central Florida and spent, a decade or so in Central Arkansas. So I'm gonna let you pick the location, but tell us your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Well, since I don't know, since I don't get out that much with all my kids, because eating with little kids is just so stressful, I'll pick Little Rock because I did a lot more going out to eat there. And I would say my favorite place is a little taco joint called The Fold.
The fold it is. All right. Well, Lindsay, you gave some great information. I enjoyed our conversation and just hearing about your background, kind of going from your graphic designer degree and getting your background there, not really getting that job out of the gate. So having to, scrap around with different odds and end jobs, finally building up your own company, learning some lessons and going on your own journey, which led you into real estate investing and making that career transition and then ultimately being able to start becoming an investor yourself, growing and scaling your portfolio, and now being in a position to take it to the next level. You talked about just how important delegation was for you to be able to scale and manage your properties from afar, but also just understanding how important it is to surround yourself with people who are playing the game at that higher level. Again, for folks who want to learn more about you, they can go to lindsay.sharmaproperties.com. We'll make sure we link to that in our show notes. Lindsay, thank you again for being a great guest and coming on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.